Good evening, traveler. My name is Meg and I'm here to teach you all about travelers in Blood on the Clocktower. Travelers are for your time-illiterate friends who never show up when they say they will. Travelers can join late or leave early. You also use travelers when you have more than 15 players. I was gonna say as it indicates here, but it doesn't indicate there. Everyone knows when someone is a traveler and what traveler that person is, but no one knows their alignment. Have your player pick a traveler, or give them a specific selection if there are ones you're interested in running, or if you are not comfortable running certain ones. There are ones that are suggested for each of the base scripts. I will go over those when we cover the characters. Once they pick a traveler, read it aloud to the entire group so that everybody knows their ability. If your player is joining late, tell them in private before they join what their alignment is. If they are there from the start, tell them the first night with a good or an evil indicator. Let your travelers study their token for a bit, as they won't be able to refer back to it because it's not on the script. I usually let them have the token before the first night begins, or before their first night begins. They can always ask you for the specific wording of their character if they forget, but there's also a list of the travelers on the paper with the player count, and this goes under the town square, so they can always pull this out if they need to. Then you will take their token and put it in your grimoire. If they are evil, put the token upside down in your grimoire. If you make your traveler good, then good. Nothing else needs to happen. If you make them evil, tell them who the demon is, either in the night with the little "this is the demon" token, or in private if they're joining late. That's all the setup. The demon doesn't get to know anything extra. If they wake every night, wake them at the start of the night. In the night order, when it says dusk, there should be a thing that says some travelers act or something like that. Generally, there are a few exceptions, which we will get to when we get to those characters. If they don't wake at night, it is up to them to use their ability. Some happen at very specific times. If they're a new player, I will usually help and prompt them. If they are a veteran, I will leave them to do their thing. Use a golden token on the town square so that everyone remembers their traveler. Travelers don't follow some of the general rules. For example, they don't count towards the final numbers for win conditions because everybody knows their traveler, so they can't be the demon. For example, let's say we have 6 alive players and 3 of them are travelers. Then we're actually on the final day, and if a non-demon player is executed, evil will win. If they're a traveler whose role changes the game fundamentally, that change goes into effect as soon as the traveler joins the game, and then it stops as soon as the traveler leaves or dies. Travelers leaving the game, so players who are leaving, don't just die, they are removed from the game so you can take their token out of your grimoire. Exile versus Execution. Another game rule difference is travelers are exiled, not executed. Exile and execution are not the same. Anyone, dead or alive, can call for an exile, and anyone, dead or alive, can vote for an exile. This does not use their ghost vote. If a player calls for an exile, they can also still nominate for execution later that same day. Exiles are called during normal nomination times. When a player calls for the exile of a traveler, you will take the vote just like you would for a normal execution. It takes 50% or more of the votes of dead and alive players. That's the difference, dead and alive players, to exile the traveler. Exiled travelers are killed, so mark them dead, and they no longer have their ability. And anything their ability was affecting stops immediately. Exiles are not executions, so the day continues and you can still nominate and execute someone at the end of the day. You can only call for the exile of each traveler once per day. Travelers can nominate, vote, and they get a ghost vote when they die, either via the demon or from an exile, and they cannot be executed. They are exiled, which results in death, just like an execution, but the day doesn't end and nominations continue. They also lose their ability when they die. Character abilities do not affect exiles. For example, the butler can vote for an exile however they like. I'll give more examples as we go through the characters for how abilities can't affect exiles. There are a few exceptions for travelers whose abilities prevent them from dying via exile. If you have one traveler, the manual suggests you make them good, but also still make them evil sometimes. If you have more than one traveler, make some good and some evil. I make my single travelers evil kinda often, because I'm a deviant. Also, I've heard of a very popular house rule that travelers can't be drunk or poisoned. I can understand why. I personally am cool with it, so I will give examples of drunkenness and poison, but feel free to make it a house rule that they can't be drunk or poisoned as long as you communicate that with your players. If a character's ability is that they choose a character, they cannot choose the traveler because travelers are not on the script. I'm not going to do a playthrough with travelers because I wouldn't be able to put enough travelers into a game to show off their abilities and make it worthwhile. So I'm just going to give lots of examples and hope that that is good. I did a lot of research on some weird interactions, so hopefully this covers what you need. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments, I will answer. These are the suggested travelers per script, but do what you want with careful consideration. I will also give some cross-script examples just in case, and now let's go through each one. The Scapegoat. If a player of your alignment is executed, you might be executed instead. And as we can see, we already have an exception where this specifically says executed and not exiled. So the Scapegoat is actually executed, not exiled, so the day would end. So if a good player is about to be executed, you could kill the good Scapegoat instead. That's up to you, and vice versa with an evil Scapegoat. The Scapegoat works for execution only, not from death by other means. Don't leave the Scapegoat's ability for the last day, otherwise everyone will just exile them. For example, the Empath is about to be executed, so you execute the good Scapegoat instead, and the day ends. Or the Imp is about to be executed, so you execute the evil Scapegoat instead. If it is early game and the demon is about to be executed and there's no Scarlet Woman, I would use the Scapegoat. If evil is really winning, then I would use the Scapegoat to save someone really powerful, like the Fortune Teller. A spy dying could trigger the good Scapegoat, and a recluse dying could trigger the evil Scapegoat. If this traveler was drunk, then they couldn't be used in place to save anyone. The Gunslinger. Each day after the first vote has been tallied, you may choose a player that voted. They die. So only after the first vote has been tallied and before the next nomination. If the players knew, I would straight up remind them about their ability after the first tally because the timing is so specific. If the town first exiles a traveler, then a nomination for execution happens, that counts as the first vote to be tallied, not the exile. The Gunslinger cannot kill anyone who voted on an exile. After the first vote is tallied, people may need to remind the Gunslinger if they voted so that the Gunslinger knows who they can target. The Gunslinger also doesn't have to kill, it's just up to them. The Gunslinger shooting someone is a death, not an execution, so the day continues. Characters like the Monk cannot protect from this because the Monk only protects from the demon. A drunk or poisoned Gunslinger can't kill anyone, so I would say you take your shot, but so-and-so survives. The Beggar. You must use a vote token to vote. If a dead player gives you theirs, you learn their alignment. You are sober and healthy. So the Beggar cannot vote without a vote token from a dead player. They shouldn't be raising their hand at all. But if they are given one, immediately take the Beggar into a private conversation and tell them that player's alignment. Dead players must freely give their vote tokens. They cannot be forced or stolen. So during the day at any time, a dead player can announce that they're giving their ghost vote to the Beggar, and then physically take their ghost vote token and put it onto the Beggar's town square token. Then pull the Beggar aside into a private conversation and tell them that player's alignment. And that dead person doesn't get to use their votes because they gave it away. The Beggar can't vote for the same execution multiple times even if they have multiple tokens. They can only use them one at a time and each one is single use only. The Beggar can also nominate for executions freely. If the Beggar dies, then they get a regular ghost vote token and all their previous tokens go away. The Beggar can freely vote for exiles because abilities don't affect exiles. Giving tokens away is for the Beggar only. People can't just give their vote tokens to others at any time. And the Beggar can't be drunk or poisoned, so if they're targeted by the poisoner, nothing happens. If they were chosen by the innkeeper, they can't be the one made drunk. The Bureaucrat. Each night choose a player, not yourself. Their vote counts as 3 votes tomorrow. So wake the Bureaucrat, they pick someone, and then tomorrow their vote counts for 3. So when you tally the votes, you'll count out loud as normal, so you'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So everyone knows who the Bureaucrat picked. The triple vote happens every time that player votes that day. The player's exile vote only counts as 1 because abilities don't affect exiles. The triple vote goes away if the Bureaucrat is killed or exiled. This also works for dead players. So if the Bureaucrat picked a dead player and they decide to vote using their ghost vote, it counts for 3. If they're drunk or poisoned, they would still wake to pick someone, but it wouldn't work. The Thief. Each night choose a player, not yourself. Their vote counts negatively tomorrow. So sort of the opposite of the Bureaucrat, they pick someone and then their vote is negative. So when you tally the votes, you will go 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5, etc. So everyone will know who the Thief chose. Abilities don't affect exiles, so there cannot be any negative votes in an exile. This stops immediately if the Thief is killed or exiled. So if players know they were chosen, they can use this to vote against a nomination. If the Thief and the Bureaucrat pick the same person, then their vote is -3. Because the Thief makes the vote negative, it's not like a -1. So their vote is -3. This also affects a dead player's ghost vote. If poisoned or drunk, they wake to pick someone, but it doesn't work. The Apprentice. On your first night, you gain a townsfolk ability, if good, or a minion ability, if evil. You choose which ability to give them, and you show them the ability on their first night in the game. They have this ability until they die. So you'll wake them, show them the you are token, and then the token of whatever ability they have. So you can put that token in your grimoire, and then the is the apprentice reminder token. You should choose a character that is not in play because there's only one token per character, but you don't have to. You must give them a character that's on the script though. They may act that night if the ability allows, and if they were given an ability that is a you start knowing, then you would give it to them right then. For example, the grandmother, the clockmaker, or the chef. So if you give the evil apprentice the assassin ability, they can use it whenever they like. I didn't see this in the manual, so I'm going to rule it like the philosopher. If the apprentice has an ability that works when they're dead, then it works if the apprentice is dead as long as they died via the way that the ability needs. So for example, the sage and the raven keeper, they get their ability if the demon kills them. So I would do the same for the apprentice. I would probably just avoid giving the apprentice an ability like that though. The matron. Each day, you may choose up to 3 sets of 2 players to swap seats. Players may not leave their seats to talk in private. So they can swap 2 people up to 3 times a day, and this change is permanent unless the matron changes it again. Any player can be moved multiple times a day. Players with physical disabilities or who may have difficulty with moving seats are immune to this ability, so make sure you say that to people so that they can feel comfortable telling you that. Players cannot talk to each other in private chats, they must stay in their seats, so they can either talk publicly or they can whisper to their neighbors. If they need to use the bathroom, let them go, but just trust that they're not going to talk to anyone. The matron typically makes their swaps at the beginning of the day. If they decide to only swap 2 sets, they can't then later decide to swap a 3rd set. They need to do them all in one sitting. Then just swap the tokens in your grimoire to accommodate. If a townsfolk is moved away from the Nodashi, they would no longer be poisoned, and then either the player that swapped with them, if they are townsfolk, would then be poisoned, or if that player is not a townsfolk, the poison would move to the next nearest townsfolk. When the matron dies, nobody swaps back, it's just that no more swaps can occur. A drunk matron, I would let it happen, but then at the end of the day, I would send everybody back to their seats. The Voudon. Only you and the dead can vote. They don't need a vote token to do so. A 50% majority isn't required. This one changes the game fundamentally. The dead and the Voudon can vote as many times as they want, no vote tokens required, and the dead will keep their ghost vote tokens. Alive players' hands must stay down, but only living players can nominate. That stays the same. If the Voudon dies or is exiled, they will get a ghost vote token, and all the dead players will still have their ghost vote token, but the Voudon's ability will go away. A 50% majority is no longer required, so it's just whoever has the most votes at the end of the day, even if that is just 1. All players, dead or alive, can vote for exile because abilities don't affect exiles. On the first day, only the Voudon gets to vote, so they decide who's executed. I'm going to read this from the manual because I like their wording. If a player is about to die and then the Voudon is exiled, that player is still about to die and nominations continue, but alive players vote as normal. If a later nomination gets more votes and it tallies to half or more of the alive players, this new player is about to die instead. The Zomboul registers as dead the first time they die, so I would count their vote. The courtier cannot drunk the Voudon because the courtier has to choose a character that is on the script and the Voudon is not on the script. If the Voudon is poisoned or drunk, I would be mean and I would take the first votes of the day and then take away all the dead vote tokens that were used. The judge. Once per game, if another player nominated, you may choose to force the current execution to pass or fail. So this is once per game, and they can do it from the time someone is nominated, either before, during, or after the votes have been tallied, but before the next person is nominated. As soon as a new person is nominated, they can only use it on the currently nominated person. They can only use the ability of somebody else nominated, the judge can't do it on their own nomination. So Erin needed 5 votes to be put on the block, but she only got 3. The judge decides to condemn them, so they are executed immediately and the day ends regardless of if there was another player who had more votes. Or Claire was already on the block with 6 votes, then Erin got 7 votes, but the judge decides that they are innocent, so Erin's votes are reduced to 0 and Claire is put back onto the block. The judge cannot do this for exiles. A poison judge would use their once per game ability and I would announce that they tried to adjudicate but the law was on holiday or something. The bishop. Only the storyteller can nominate. At least one opposing player must be nominated each day. This one also changes the game layout pretty dramatically. You can nominate as many players as you want per day, but you have to nominate at least one person who's the opposite alignment of the bishop to make it fair. There is a reminder token for this, so you can't end the day until you have removed the reminder token. You should also probably nominate at least one evil player if the bishop is evil and vice versa, so players can't narrow down the evil candidates too easily, and so that both sides have a chance to vote the correct people out. On the final day, you should nominate every alive player. You don't have to nominate the demon every day, but if there is someone who people think is the demon, they're just going to execute them as soon as you do nominate them, or they will exile the bishop. So if you want to keep your ability, at least somewhat listen to what your players want. So Claire is an evil bishop. Erin is a good tea lady. You nominate Erin and also 2 evil players and another good player. You've done your job. And of course this doesn't affect exile, so anybody can call for one. If the bishop dies, everything goes back to normal. If the bishop is poisoned, I wouldn't nominate for a while and see if my players catch on. The Butcher. Each day after the first execution, you may nominate again. This is also one where I'd prompt a new player because the time frame to use it is so small. So after the person on the block has been executed, the Butcher may nominate again, even if they already nominated earlier that day. They may also nominate someone who was already nominated. This post-execution nomination does not need to exceed the vote tally of the previous nominations. They just need 50% or more of the votes of alive players, like normal. If not enough people vote, then the second execution doesn't happen. It also doesn't matter if the vote is tied with the previous execution, because that person has already been executed. If the original executed player is executed but doesn't die, the Butcher still gets their nomination. If no one was executed, the Butcher does not get their nomination. The Butcher cannot do their extra nomination after successful exile, only after successful execution. As an example, James is on the block, he is executed and dies. The Butcher makes another nomination, they nominate Michelle. Michelle gets enough votes and is also executed, and the day ends. No one would be allowed to call for exile after either execution because executions end the day. If poisoned or drunk, I would say Jenny tries to nominate Michelle, but it does not go through, or something like that. The Bone Collector. Once per game at night, choose a dead player. They regain their ability until dusk. This is once per game, so they can just shake their head if they don't want to use it yet. You will wake them and they will point to a dead player. If they point to an alive player, just shake your head. They must try again. Point to the town square board if they seem confused so that they can see who is dead. You do not show the "this character selected you" token, so either they learn when they wake up, or the Bone Collector needs to tell them the next day if it is a daytime ability. If the Bone Collector dies before the player they chose gets to use their ability, they don't get to use it. The player is not resurrected, they just get their ability back for that night and the next day. Even if this ability was a once per game ability or a you start knowing ability. For example, the Dead Slayer could get another shot. A townsfolk could nominate the Dead Virgin, trigger their ability and kill them. The Dead Poisoner could poison someone one last time. The Dead Artist gets to ask another question. The Dead Evil Twin would secretly have their ability, so if the town executed the good twin, evil would win. The Dead Washerwoman would get shown another set of one of these 2 players is a particular townsfolk. The Dead Devil's Advocate would get to choose someone to save from execution, and it would work until the end of the next day. The Professor would wake and choose a dead player and resurrect them if they are townsfolk. The Bone Collector could also choose a dead traveler. The ability works until dusk, so if the Bone Collector wanted to give the Juggler their ability, the Juggler would have to juggle during the day, then the Bone Collector would have to give them their ability back the next night for them to get their information. If poisoned or drunk, the Bone Collector may use their ability, but it won't work, and that's their one-time use gone. The Harlot. Each night, choose a living player. If they agree, you learn their character, but you both might die. So wake them up and they choose someone, then go to the player that they chose and show them the "this character selected you" token and the Harlot token. Then the player either nods or shakes their head. If they said no, nothing happens. If yes, go back to the Harlot, wake them up and show them the character of the player they chose. Then decide if they both die. If they chose the demon and the demon agreed to reveal their character, I would not kill them because I wouldn't want to end the game. Unless there was a mastermind or an evil twin in the game and the game was more than halfway over, but that's up to you. That totally depends on your game setup and how your players are playing. The Harlot only learns character, not alignment. So if the Harlot chose the goon, they would not learn their alignment, just that they are the goon. If the Harlot chooses the player that is the imp, and the imp agrees, show them the imp token. If the Harlot chose the philosopher who chose to gain the ability of the artist, you would show them the philosopher token, not the artist token. If the Harlot chooses the mutant and they agree, To me, that would trigger the Mutant's ability, so I could execute just the Mutant for breaking madness, or I could execute them both with the Harlot's ability. The same thing goes for Cerenovus madness. The Harlot acts before the Cerenovus, so it would be the player who was mad the previous day. If they chose to reveal their character to the Harlot, I wouldn't maybe execute them, but to me that does count as a madness break. So either I could execute them, or I could kill them both using the Harlot's ability. You would just announce that so-and-so is executed and then move on to the rest of the night. Regarding this character in Madness, I did some slight research but couldn't find any opinions on the interaction, so this is purely my opinion that showing your character to the Harlot counts as breaking madness. If the Harlot chooses the Vortox and the Vortox agrees, you will show them the Vortox token because the Vortox only affects townsfolk. If the Harlot is poisoned or drunk, show them an incorrect token, or don't re-wake them and make them think that the player chose not to reveal. The Barista. Each night until dusk. 1. A player becomes sober, healthy, and gets true info, or 2. Their ability works twice. They learn which. So big choices here from the storyteller. Whichever character and whichever power you choose, of course if the Barista is good, you should use it to help good. If the Barista is evil, you should use it to help evil. But you can still balance the game by not allowing powerful characters to act twice. Also, if the Barista is evil, you should still use it on good sometimes, because otherwise good might band together and be like, we've never been chosen and we all trust each other, so the Barista must be evil. The manual suggests that if the Barista is good, select a good player 2/3 of the time and vice versa. So each night at the top of the night, choose a character and which ability you want to give them. You will wake them, show them the This Character Selected You token and the Barista token, even though it's technically you who's selecting them. Then show them either a 1 or a 2. 1 means that they are sober and healthy and must get your info, and a 2 means that they get to use their ability twice. If you chose option 1, then no matter what, if they get chosen later to be drunk or poisoned, it doesn't affect them. They also have to get true info. So for example, if the spy is executed, the Undertaker would get shown the spy token. They cannot be shown as a townsfolk or an outsider. The same thing goes for the Recluse and the Fortune Teller's red herring. So if the Fortune Teller chose their red herring, you must tell them no instead of the usual yes with the red herring, because they need to get true information. If a Vortox is in play, the player given option 1 must get true info. The Savant would get 2 pieces of correct information. In the event of a puka poisoning, this is my opinion because I couldn't really find too much information what other people thought, the Barista is not like the monk who protects. They don't protect, they make sober/healthy. And the manual says that you mark the Barista chosen player as sober and healthy even if they are already marked as poison/drunk. So the Barista ability doesn't take away the poison, just stops it from affecting the player temporarily. Yes, I read that because I wrote it down. Aaron is the chambermaid. Claire is the puka. You pick Aaron and show them a 1, so they know they're getting a 1. Claire poisons Aaron. Aaron is not being affected by the poison, but they're not poisoned. They're just not being affected by it. So then the next night, Aaron is now poisoned and now dies due to the puka. As they were the previously poisoned player, they just weren't being affected by it. For option 2, if the ability is worded as a must-use ability, then they must use it twice. If the ability is worded as a may-choose ability, then they may choose not to use it twice. If they are a character with a once per game ability and they already used it, they get to use it again. If they haven't used their ability, they may use it twice that night or day. They will also learn info again if they were a you start knowing ability. For example, the Klutz would have to choose 2 players when they die. If either are evil, evil wins. If the Dreamer acts twice, they will point to a player, you'll show them 2 tokens, then they will pick another player and you'll show them another set of 2 tokens. The Savant would learn 1 true thing, 1 false thing, and then another 1 true thing, 1 false thing. Don't give them all 4 at once. The Philosopher, in my opinion, would get to choose 2 characters and gain both abilities. They would wake in the night when the one woke and then wake later on in the night when the other one wakes. And if both of those characters were in play, both of them would be drunk. The Shabaloth would get to kill 4 people. The Monk would protect 2 people. The Butler chooses 2 masters. Some characters don't do anything, like the Saint, so them acting twice doesn't do anything. Also the same with the Flower Girl and the Town Crier. Them acting twice doesn't do anything, so don't give them that ability, because that's silly. Do something that changes the game. The awesome thing about the Barista is that you choose the player, so if you don't want to deal with a certain ability acting twice and what that means, just don't choose them. The Deviant. If you were funny today, you cannot die by exile. This one is totally up to you. I would be lenient because it's just so silly, and being funny on demand is not easy. The manual says that you can come up with different criteria if people find that being funny is too stressful, such as creating a positive mood or helping others. So if they get enough votes and are exiled, but they were funny today, they cannot die. Here's some extra interactions I thought of. If your Pit-Hag tries to change your Traveler, there's a few things you can do. If your Traveler is a Traveler because they need to leave early, I would not let the Pit-Hag swap them into a regular anything. I might let them change them into another Traveler if they were smart enough to point at the paper on the town square. If the Traveler is a Traveler because of 15+ players, I would allow them to change them. If the Traveler is a Traveler because they arrived late, I would allow the Pit-Hag to change them. However, Travelers are public info, so I would announce that so-and-so is no longer this Traveler. For a barber swap, pretty much the same thing. I would not allow it if the Traveler is a Traveler because they need to leave early. I would allow it for other Traveler reasons, but I would have to announce that so-and-so is no longer a Traveler and that so-and-so is now a Traveler. You could say Travelers are not allowed to swap or change, but just make your ruling consistent. The Godfather doesn't work on a Traveler because the Traveler is exiled, not executed, so the Godfather can't protect Travelers. Travelers count towards the Mayor's ability, so you must exile them to get to Final 3. The Scarlet Woman says Travelers don't count, so keep that in mind. I would advise against evil twin grandmother Traveler stuff. For Cerenovus, I would say that you can make a Traveler mad, and if the Traveler breaks madness, they would be executed because it's the Cerenovus' ability. And that is all. We did it. We did it! Not to plug my second channel, but I do have one and I'm going to be doing silly stuff on there. It's called The Megapoo. I hope this was helpful and safe travels.